love
We
it.
made it.
I know. And as the intro came on, my daughter texted me. I sent her a message earlier today saying, "Stop trying to be perfect. If the world tries to tell you anything else, tell them to fuck off." And she just wrote, "That's real, Mom. Love you."
That is pretty spot on and pretty perfect, I would say, and especially for today. So I have a different background. Can you tell a little bit?
I love it. It's so exciting. I mean, talk about perfectly imperfect, right? We're sitting here shooting the breeze. I get to finally meet Red, your hubby, all while we're supposed to already be on. And I'm like, see, that's life. That's what I love about it because it's not
That
supposed to be scripted.
it's stripped down.
It is stripped down. So, so
It's not just healing the illusion; it's breaking through the illusion.
well, yeah, and just showing up real
Yeah.
and imperfect. It's interesting because I posted a picture of me and Nana's this Jack guy, and I love this picture because you see that he's not always. I mean, 95% of the time he is, but he always isn't flexing, and I think that's important that we show people that.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I agree. I've had an interesting week. How about you?
Whoo, man, it's been saucy, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of good work. I'm sure. Very productive. I'm hoping.
Yes. And interestingly enough, like when we first met, you were like, damn, you had to address some things that were coming up for you. And really, I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday. I interviewed this beautiful woman who's definitely going to be on our show because once you connect with her, Gemma, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, we were talking about, what she does and stuff. And I realized that I still have a shame story, which if you had said to me 2 days ago, well, maybe I would have, but it pisses me the fuck off. I'm really mad about it.
Yeah. I I had a similar experience this week as well.
Yeah.
So why don't you go first? Do you want to share?
Yeah.
You
Well, yeah,
want to go
because,
into that?
well, I think for our audience, you guys have to understand if you don't talk about what causes you angst or suffering or guilt or shame or all the things, then
Right.
it compiles. And as I recognize issues or old patterns of behavior and beliefs that come up for me, I talk about them even if it's uncomfortable because sometimes it is, because
Mhm.
I know that in doing so, I'm freeing myself from that narrative, freeing myself from that guilt, freeing myself from that shame. And it's interesting because I think this is going to be a story that resonates with a lot of people. It's
I
about money.
I'm gonna pause you for a minute because we didn't tell anybody who the heck we are.
Oh yeah, we didn't. Did Krista tell us that? Or did you just figure that out?
Did Krista give us that instruction?
Well, that I
So,
know. She's like her, it's
I'm
like
Michelle with
Carrie
Moksha
Settle.
Grace Coaching, and
I am Kerri Lewis of Kerri Lewis Coaching, working with people who struggle with addiction and mental health. Oh, and speaking too. I got speaking engagements. So,
yay! That's
yeah,
awesome. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think our both of our passions is definitely that deep emotional work that, like you were saying, addressing it while it's there, not swallowing it down, not smushing it down and burying it, because guess what? It's going to come up later. And I think that we both have a passion for taking out the shovels and digging it up. So that way you have control of when it comes up versus it surprising you and blindsiding you.
Yeah, well, and of course, we know that if you don't address it, it just compiles and compiles and compiles and compiles until the universe requires
Decide.
you to address it. You will eventually, at some point, you can push it away, but you will experience either a physical illness, an emotional
Mhm.
illness, unexpected shift in life that you didn't see coming, and it's all for the purpose of giving yourself permission to acknowledge you're suffering based on beliefs and habits that have been embedded in us, right?
Right.
Because that's really it.
Right.
And then healing through them.
Yeah. And if you don't address it when you can, right? Even if you have to like wait until you get home or wait until the next day, but if you don't address it and the universe keeps, universe, God, whatever you believe in, and you keep getting nudges, if you don't make those changes from your, right, from your strength, your place of strength, then the universe, divine, whatever you believe in, is going to make them for you, because either
Yep.
way change is going to happen. And so that's one of the myths. And I want to go back to your conversation, but yeah, that myth of control uh is real. There is some control that people have, but I think people get mixed up on what that is, what that looks like. But let's go back to your conversation and stick to that, and then we will jump into whatever comes next.
Oh, okay, but let's talk about the control because I think it ties into my shame
Okay.
story. You mentioned that there is some control. For
Yeah.
me, the only control we have at
Mm-hmm.
all is to allow ourselves to experience whatever is coming up for us in any given moment. That is it, right? Being present in
Yes,
this moment.
and and you also have the control of your own emotions to say, I need a moment.
Yeah.
And you take the moment and you breathe, and then you respond versus that knee jerk reaction that you're probably going to wish you didn't do.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's so important for people to remember. Yeah, you cannot control other people. You can't control the outside environment. I can't control if an airplane's going to come across the, sky. But I can control how I respond to it. Those are the things that we can control. And so I think when we say, we have to be very careful when explaining you have no control over anything, because on one hand we don't, but we do have control of us, and we have control of how we feel. We have control of our heart and how our perspective. Are we coming from a place of love? Are we coming from a place of fear and shame and guilt and regret and all of that other stuff? And so
Right.
that's the only distinction, like, I think is just super important for people to remember.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that is a choice, right? Is getting curious about why you're experiencing what you're experiencing in any
Yes.
given moment and allowing yourself to be curious about it, right? I was
Mhm.
just journaling um
Mm.
about money, right? That is my shame story to this day, money. And it's been embedded in me since I can remember because
Yeah.
my parents came from a lack mindset. And so it was always you have to work incredibly hard, you have to hustle, you have to, you
Mhm.
know, work endless hours, and you're not going to have enough. Also,
Yeah.
if you do make money, then you're bad because people who have money are shady or they're self-serving or right. So all of this comes up,
Yep.
right? And so I was thinking about it yesterday. Me and Gemma were talking, and we're talking about love and all of this. And I'm like, I have what I would, what I know to be like the perfect relationship. And the reason why is because we just love each other where we're at in any given moment. There really is no expectation for Nana and I. Like other
Mhm.
than, I love him. I just love him as he is. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in shame because I would never want to merge our lives together in marriage or whatever because
Mhm.
I can't bring to the table financially what he brings to the table right now. And does that mean I'll never
Mhm.
do that? No, but I'm sitting in shame about that in that moment, which is causing me to feel terrible about myself. And it
Mhm.
takes away all of the understanding I have about what I offer to the world, which is an immense amount of love. Like that is
Right.
unequivocal love and
Mhm.
kindness. But because of that, insatiable and insidious belief that your worth is wrapped up in money, which
Mhm.
is incredibly pervasive in America, particularly. Not all countries have our mindset around
Right.
capitalism and money and what matters most, but in America, your worth, your quote unquote success is wrapped up in what you have in your bank and how much you have. Like materialistically wise. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, holy crap, you know? So I'm chasing all these things I love. I love them. I love doing
Mhm.
everything I do. But you know what's holding me back is that I'm putting a price tag on it because I think I have to chase my passions and make a certain
Mhm.
amount to make it worth it, which is crap. Because then I lose
And
sight of what
and you
I'm meant.
know and you know that it's
Yeah,
crap. You know that it's crap, and you know that that is a bullshit old story that has been hammered into you, and you don't deserve it, and everyone whose lives you touch doesn't deserve it, because
mhm,
and I'm so glad that you're miss open anyway, and you're teaching me how to be even more vulnerable. But um this is it's such a big thing, because the bottom line is, Kerri, is that you're in service to people.
yep,
Being in service and having an energetic exchange is way more important than money. Way
yep,
more important. Now, we can't necessarily pay our bills with energetic exchanges. Some people can, but yeah, the teeter totters on what's legal and not. But um, you know, it's about being happy, and it's about what you want to do. You know, and I've been going through the same thing, and it's like I could go corporate, I could go back to corporate, I could go back to sales, I could go back to making six figures. Was I happy? Was I doing what I truly wanted to be doing? To a point, aspects of it, but what I'm doing now allows me to do all of it at the same time, to be in service, to advocate for others, to give people a voice, to help people, get into their dark shadows. All of that I get to do now. Does it come with a price? It depends on how you look at it, because am I more in service now, and am I happier with myself as a person, as a human being, as a spiritual being? Yeah, I am. I am. And like you, there's people that whisper in our ears, and I had someone say to me, "Well, why don't you just go get a job? Like, why don't you get a real job?" It's like, really? Really? We're going to go there? And so it's just interesting, and that, you wanted to talk about the shame story. I wanted to talk about judgment and forgiveness and regret and guilt, which is a loaded story. Uh, but it's all the same, isn't it?
it absolutely is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, what I ultimately determined is I just have to forgive myself for feeling like I have to figure this out, because I really, and that's where I say we're not in control. And the reason why I'm so open, Michelle, about everything, and that really turns a lot of people off. Like verbal diarrhea of the mouth I've had since I could talk, literally. Um, but I learned that if it's out of my head, I don't have to feel like I have to control it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and I can surrender. And then things work out perfectly. And that that gives me peace. And what I'm reminded of is the only way I'll find peace is forgiveness in myself for each
Mm-hmm.
moment that I separate from love. And that seems so cliche and so woo-wee. But at the end of the day, right, if you look at any of the great spiritual texts, and if you look at quantum physics and how they
Mm-hmm.
measure energy, right? If you can stay in the energy of love,
Right.
well, you attract love. And
Right.
that love shows up in a myriad of ways, including money. because money is
Yes,
just an energetic exchange. It stems from
that's
love.
it.
But again, it's this conditioned, controlling thinking that we have to do to achieve instead of just being and
Right.
letting what's meant to unfold. And you can't do that in shame. You can't do that in judgment. You can't
No.
do that in guilt. And you cannot do that if you condemn yourself and or somebody else by not forgiving them.
Right. And you have to, like you said, surrender to the outcome. You
Yep.
can put it out there what you want, but you cannot tell the divine, the Holy Spirit, again, whatever you believe in, you cannot dictate how it's delivered to you. You can ask, but how it's delivered is not your purpose. It's not, that's not for you to decide. And you have to sit back and go, okay, all right. And you have to be a little bit like a kid, asking Santa for what you want for Christmas. You can't, you don't know where you're going to get it from. Is it going to be the parents? Is it going to be Santa? Is it going to who? I don't know. I just want it, right? I just want the gift. So if you, it's the same thing. I'm putting it out there. This is what I want. I want to give more to the world. I want to be in more service. I want more. My thing I say every day is I want to welcome in increasing amounts of clients from multiple sources on a continuous basis. That's it. That's it. Because then that allows me to be in service, and then I get to do what I love. And you know that old saying, if you're doing what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So it's, but listen, it's hard as hell to stick to all of that because bills are due and there are things that we want to do or we want to get or we want to go. And so it's just that it's this balancing or harmonizing with it. And
Well, I mean,
that's
and
hard.
again, it's yeah, it is hard. It's incredibly hard, and yet, um, I like you wouldn't do it any other way. And what was helpful, I went 3 years. Like, so I like you worked for corporate, made lots of money, and at the time I was steeped in addiction. So of course I'm sitting here buying my kids whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I really started to heal, I mean, the girls went Christmases without getting anything from me. Anything. I mean, I had the conversation because again, mom, verbal diarrhea of the mouth. I'm keeping it real. I'm like, I would rather show up in love every day for you than be at a job that's suffocating my soul and sure allowing me to provide for you materialistically, but not energetically, which to me is far more important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what did help was um talking to my twin sister and telling her, I was like, listen, I'm on purpose. I have to chase my passion. And she's like, well, then you just have to do it. And I
That's
think
right.
that freed me a lot because she was my why for the longest time. She was the person that I overcame drugs because of. She's the person I moved through an abusive relationship because I didn't love myself enough to do the work, but I loved her enough. And so for her to give me that permission, but ultimately even that is an external seeking of somebody else's um validation, and that's problematic because if you cannot find it within yourself, if I cannot give myself grace to show up and do it, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly waiting for something else to make me feel better,
Yeah.
and that to me is the definition of addiction. Like,
Yeah.
if you
It,
think
yeah.
for something externally, then that is addiction. Whether it's to a
Mm-hmm.
person's validation and acceptance or to a chemical or whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And circles us back to the very first conversation we had, which was about addictions. And I remember I had a meeting with a boss a few years ago, and I said, you know what? I can wake up, I can make sure I get to bed on time, I can wake up, I can have my meditations, I could be in a great place. And then we meet, and your mood will either bring me down or it'll fill me up and I feel even better. And she was like, it is not my responsibility to make you feel one way or the other. And I was like, oh. It was like this moment of realization of, yeah, she's not responsible for how I want to feel. And then you have to take that farther, because if you are doing all of the things for yourself and you're waking up in a good mood and you're doing your meditations, whatever it is, and you're in a good mood, and you're then smacked in the face with a situation where either everyone around you is in a bad mood or somebody explodes or something like that, this is where we go to the control. You get to decide if you're
Mhm.
going to jump in the slippery slope, right? The quicksand with that negative mood, or are you going to go, I'm going to hold space for you. I'm going to listen if you want me to, but I am not jumping in that pool with you.
Yeah.
And that you do get to control. And I think people forget that they have that choice, that is in their hands. They get to do that, and that's like so cool when you actually embrace it.
Well, so it's interesting you bring that up because I was working with a client yesterday on this very topic because this
Mm-hmm.
person is incredibly intuitive, young, in their teens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is if you haven't done the work to examine how you're feeling, which most people don't do, right? Because we're not
Mm-hmm.
taught to show up, then you enter a situation and you absorb another person's energy and you cannot make the distinction between whether it's your energy and or the other person's energy. And I
Right.
think that's really what we need to be teaching in school, and I teach my daughters this extensively. I'm like, "Get clear on how you're
Yeah.
feeling and recognize when it's not your anxiety, when it's not your anger."
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, because we are so energetically connected and so powerfully intertwined, if you don't have that clarity, you're absorbing everybody's energy all the time and can't even make the distinction between what's yours and what's theirs. And that is the work too. Right? I
Right.
think both you and I have had to go through a lot of that work where you get curious about, well, how am I feeling today? And then
Mm-hmm.
what is the mood of this experience I'm in, whether it be at work, whether it be with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be in the family setting of my whole house, because I live with 14 people. So it's really getting very clear.
Right.
And to your point, once you are clear, deciding whether that energy, what's going on in that situation serves you, or
Right.
whether it's in your best interest to just remove yourself from the situation and give yourself permission
Mm-hmm.
to do that. Because sometimes removing yourself from your family can feel hard. But if it doesn't feel good for you in that moment,
Right.
then you don't have to sit in it. You just don't.
Well, and I think, I did it for the first time, right? A couple of years ago when I learned this lesson, and I was like, okay, let me try this. And so my husband, who we just had our 34th wedding anniversary this weekend, um, we really do know each other's moods, and there's times where I take the step back that I need to, and then there's times where I'll, like you, mouth vomit, right? And something comes out and it just makes the situation worse. But I remember this one night where he was in a really bad mood over something, and I just held space for him, but I didn't allow it to affect my mood. And it was new, right? It was new. Been together 30 years. It was new for him to not, it didn't affect me. And so he
Yeah.
saw the change, that I wasn't affected by it. I appreciated and respected where he was, but I didn't dive in with him. And he asked me a question about it, like, well, doesn't that upset you? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm sorry it's affecting you, but it's not mine. And that's one of the things that I teach my clients all the time, is to ask the questions just like you do. And the one that I love is this mine? And is it true? Is it true and is it mine, are my two most favorite questions that I want everybody to ask all the time, whether you're a client or not. Is it mine? Is it true?
Mm.
Because we tell ourselves a lot of freaking stories and they don't serve us. And they might be limiting beliefs, and they might be old, they might be somebody else's opinion that we're grasping onto. And, you know, we have to decide, is it ours? Is it the truth? And if it's not ours, send it back with love.
Yeah.
Stamp it, return to sender with love, and just send it back. You just literally send it back, and just don't, you can appreciate where they are and then let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Well, it speaks to the fact that, again, going back to something I said earlier, this human experience is meant for joy and love, really. And then
Mm-hmm.
everything else is just bullshit. It really is. And that took me years to understand. So for anybody who's like, what is she talking about? I get it. I really do. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
expect you to drink the Kool-Aid I'm selling, because it will take you going through your own journey to get
Yeah.
there. And the other thing is, everybody's gonna get there. So it doesn't matter whether it's in this moment in
Right.
time or 25 years, but you're gonna get there. Um, and so, when you said the questions are, is this true? The other one is, does this make me feel good? And if it doesn't,
Yep.
let it go. And it can be anything from my shame story around money, which I already feel better, like it's gone. Like just
Mm-hmm.
saying it to you, right? And working with Gemma and talking to Yanko, like it's like, oh, okay, well that's bullshit anyway. Now
Right.
will it come up again? It possibly, because it's such an embedded
Mm-hmm.
belief that sometimes you have to pull it out many, many times, but then you're free from it for good. And I know that to be true. Um,
It's
and so
true.
I know that if I'm feeling peaceful and if I'm in joy, I'm in truth. And that's all I have to worry about. And if I'm not, what do I need to come back to that peace, to that joy?
Right.
And doing whatever I need to do that, which in this case was sharing with whoever's watching this my truth. To which leads me to your truth.
My truth. So I'll pose the question: what is the difference between regret and guilt?
That's
In-
hard for me because I don't have either. I really don't regret. There's
okay.
nothing I regret at all. And I'm talking about everything from stealing to hitting my child to smashing my
Mm-hmm.
ex-husband's stove. Well, it was ours at the time. And the reason why is I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through every single moment. Um with re with so I for me, there's no
Yeah.
distinction. Like, there isn't, and I can see that there might be for other people, but I don't regret anything because I've also healed from the guilt of what I would have regretted.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is the distinction, is that there's things that have happened that I don't regret, because like you said, it's created who we are today. I wouldn't be here if all of the things did not happen to me exactly in the right order, right? That they were designed to. So that regret, there is no regret. I don't regret that. Once something's done, it's done. You go on. You don't regret it. The guilt is the questioning, not even the questioning, I want to do the ho'oponopono right now. It's the forgiveness of having to make the choice in the first place, right? And saying, okay, I made the choice, I don't regret my choice, but God, that was a choice. And it's just giving it that moment and that respect that I think it deserves, that moment deserves. And then asking yourself, why is it coming up for me again? Why am I still lugging this around? And I've had So the week was kind of diving into that and the guilty feelings. What is it that I don't regret, but that I potentially have guilt over, that I have guilt over? And moving through that and healing it and forgiving it, right? Forgiving it and the situation and forgiving myself and those around me. But the guilt was making decisions on my daughter's treatment when she was going through cancer. Signing off your kid's hearing is a big deal. Signing off her potential to be a mother is a huge weight to bear. But on the other hand, she wouldn't be here potentially if I didn't sign those papers. So you see what I mean? So it's like there's no regret. But God, I could not could have decisions there, it couldn't have been different. It was
It couldn't.
exactly the way it was meant to be. But these things that we go through, what is put right in front of us sometimes really puts us in a fucking pickle. It's just really. And so then you have to think about it, and you have to heal it, and you have to be okay with it. And I love Ho'oponopono. I love it. I love it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I love Ho'oponopono, and I do it a lot uh, because it makes me feel better. I used it the other day as like it feels like a cleansing. Like people go on, like the other day you were doing the juicing and the cleansing, right? Well, Ho'oponopono to me is like a spiritual cleansing. Like it just cleanses your soul. So that's my story.
Well, so
That's what I was working with this week.
I think that you touch upon a really important point, and both of our stories tie really beautifully into this, which is if you have an emotional response to anything, you
Mm-hmm.
have stuff to forgive.
Right.
That's real.
Mm-hmm.
You really do. Here's the interesting thing. I, in this moment, have forgiven myself for everything when it comes to money. In an
Mm-hmm.
hour, might I need to make that choice again? It's possible. Because if the emotional experience comes up, if I feel anything but joy or peace, that is my roadmap to know that I
Yeah.
have something that I have to release.
Right.
And that's where your hope and hope practice comes in. That's where my practice comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just giving yourself permission to recognize, oh, I still have some stuff to unpack. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so again, this ties back to like, I can speak very openly and candidly about my rapes and some of the experiences I had earlier in my life, but that's because I went through enough moments of being overwhelmed with emotion and giving
Right.
myself permission to feel it and then forgive it, that now there's no emotional attachment. When it
Yeah.
comes to money in this moment, there's no emotional attachment, but it's something that I still contend with at times, so I can't
Mhm.
say it's completely healed. I don't know until one day I look back and be like, "Oh, wow, the past 5 years, I haven't given one iota of an emotional response to this
Right.
narrative," and that's when I know I'm healed.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, even me saying that over the last couple weeks and telling my guilt story and what I've been holding on to, I have gotten to the point where I was in tears to sharing it here and being okay with it. And and I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday because she was talking about how she feels some guilt and some shame around um, not being able to have a baby. And I said, but can you love yourself anyway? Can you just unconditionally love yourself anyway? And she had a pause, like she paused and 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 admitted, I don't know. And I think that, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about, is that unconditional love means unconditional acceptance. It does not mean putting up with bad behavior.
Nope.
That's not part of this. That's unconditionally accepting somebody for who they are, whether you like how they handle things or not, because that's part of judgment, which is kind of where we left off last week. uh, but unconditionally understanding who they are as a person, loving them anyway, but you can also decide to love them from afar. And that is your choice. That is where you have strength.
Even with family. So,
Yeah,
my
absolutely, with family.
like, I tell people all the
Absolutely.
time, I love my mother unconditionally. I do. And I know that she is love and I see the beauty that she is. But I also know that I am not willing to engage with the ego side of her, which is pretty pervasive in her life. And so I don't talk to her. And for a lot of people, they're like, "What do you mean you don't talk to your mother?" Specifically because I know the circumstances in which she lives in. And I'm like, that's her journey. It's not for me to judge her
Yes.
journey. I cannot, you said, you talk about how, you want to support and help more clients. My phrase to the myself every day to the universe is um it's actually a prayer, and I'm going to say it because it's taken me a long time, but it's love, creator of the infinite. With reverence, gratitude, and love, I call into your name. Thy kingdom come, unconditional love will be done within me as it exists within the infinite. Please give me this day unconditional love, peace, endless amounts of joy, and forgive me my moments of separation as I work tirelessly to come back to love. Lead me away from the need to understand, judge, or control, and deliver me from ego so that I may be a true representation of unconditional love in human form as exists within the infinite. I rest in thee, I let it be, and so it is. Right. And I say that all the time in the
Thank
morning,
you for
but throughout
sharing
the
that.
day. Yes.
I thank you for sharing that, because the first couple times I've heard it from you, I love it. It's very peaceful. So
And it's
thank you.
personal. And I think we all
It
need
is.
that personal thing. But I specifically remind myself many, 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 many times throughout the day, it's not for me to understand. It's not for me to judge, and I'm not meant to be in control. And the only control I really have is when I find myself in angst, saying that very prayer for myself or something similar to help bring me back to peace. Everything else is really at the end of the day trivial. And when we have Yanko on here, he'll be like, I mean, he'll tell you, he's like, it doesn't matter anyway. So
It doesn't matter anyway.
but really
But it's true. It
it's so
doesn't matter, because of the illusion that any of this is real. And I won't go down that path today. We'll wait maybe for Yanko to be on. Um, but why worry about things that haven't happened yet? Why judge other people? Your role on in this world, in whatever this you believe this world to be, you are not in control
no.
of other people. And who are you to judge anybody? And unconditionally accepting them for who they are, like you were talking about when we ended last week, we were talking about kids, right? And accepting them for who they are, where they're at. We have to parent them, but once they get to a certain age, we can't we can't decide that we're going to attempt to run their life. That's not our role anymore. They have their own journey to go on, just like our parents do, just like our friends do. And the only thing that we can do is love and accept them for who they are. If you don't want to partake in it, especially if there's addiction, listen, that's your journey. I'm not going to watch you. If that's your journey, that's your journey. And I'm here and I love you and I'll be here for you and I believe in you. but I'm not going to watch you if it's drugs or alcohol, or I'm not going to watch you kill yourself. And it's that stepping back. You know, how many times have you had a client say to you, well, I expected more from that person and they disappointed me? you're you're judging them. Maybe they're not capable of doing what you expected or living up to your high standards. And I don't think people think about it that way a lot. I think they flip it too much.
Well, I mean, our standards are based in the beliefs that have been embedded in the first place,
Yeah.
so none of it really, and that's the thing is, I ask myself what matters to me, and, you know, if it feels good, that's what matters, and anything else, I just let it be. I don't engage, and but I don't judge because, first off, if I judge, then I'd be judging myself because Lord knows, you know, in any given day, I'm human, I can pop
Mm-hmm.
off, I can yell at my kids, I can say something insensitive to Nana. I mean, there's a million things. Um, but secondly, who's to say what's good or bad? Who is it? Like, we can't, I don't know. I don't have enough information about the universe and this experience to know what's good or bad or
Yeah.
why somebody goes through that. And again, if you think about it this way, had I not gone through the suffering I've been through, had you not gone through the suffering you've been through, had Krista not gone through the suffering she's been
Mm-hmm.
through, we wouldn't be able to show up in service to the people who are going through the suffering
Absolutely.
now. And
Absolutely.
so you can't know. You just can't know. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And also, if you're in judgment of anybody, you're not looking at yourself and you're not learning yourself. The moment I'm in judgment of anybody, I'm like, ooh, what is it that I'm avoiding within myself that I don't want to address? And I tell my daughters that. I
Yes.
had this conversation yesterday. I'm like, babe,
Mm-hmm.
if they're judging you, they're too busy looking at you to look at what they need to do for themselves, so don't worry about it. And of course, she's
Yes.
14, so she's like, "You
Yep.
don't understand." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. It's hard." And at your age, I would have said the same thing to my mom, so I don't expect you to, but the reality is don't worry about it cuz worry about what brings you joy, and that's all you have to worry about.
You know what I think brings it home for some people, especially if they're like visual? Watch a horse race. Watch a group of people running a race, right? Or hurdling or swimming. If they look back, even for a second, or they look side to side to see what everyone else is doing, what happens to their time? What
Yep.
happens to their momentum? It stops. They're not going to win the race doing that. You have to focus on what your purpose is, and you have to just put those, why do horses wear the blinders? Because they don't want them looking at the horses next to them. So watch a freaking horse race and you'll see exactly why you have to keep the eye on the prize, which is your purpose or whatever it is you want out of life. And stop comparing, stop looking at everybody else and being worried about what people are doing. It drives me crazy.
Well, and do what feels good for you. It does not have to make sense. So I stopped wearing bras like 3 years ago. I only own black leggings. Almost everything I wear has a skull on it. And I show up at executive meetings in front of board members that way and stuff. The
Mhm.
reality is a lot of times I'm rejected because those people that I'm engaging with can't see beyond my look, but that's how I feel good. That's how I show up in my power. That's how I feel
Right.
like, I mean, I'm chill. I'm happy. And so if those people that I have a conversation with, reject what I have to offer based on what feels good for me, I understand intrinsically it's not a right fit in the first place, and I'm good
Exactly.
with it. I'm cool. I'm happy.
It's
I'm not
fine.
judging them because they get to feel good too. And if I
Yeah.
don't make them feel good, then I'm not a good fit. But I also know that by showing up and doing what feels so good for me, I attract people like Michelle, like Krista, like all of these wonderful people I have in my circle of like love, right?
Right.
That do accept me because I
Mhm.
feel good and am okay with that. And so, to your point, is don't focus on what others are doing. And adding to that, do what feels good for you. Because if you show up in love for
Mhm.
yourself,
Right.
doing what feels good for you will never harm another person. It can't. It
Right.
literally, like, not intentionally, it cannot harm another person. If they perceive it as a hurt, that's their issue they got to work out, not mine.
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because that brings me back to the one other thing I wanted to say about judgment. If we are all connected, if we are all one, and you are taking the time to judge someone else or hold them to your standard, you then are judging yourself and ultimately whoever you believe created us. And
Yeah.
who the heck do you think that you are to judge the infinite, right? That is so powerful when you think about that. And when you're in judgment, if you stop for a moment and just breathe and you pause and you go, whoa, wait a minute, who am I to be judging the creator, right? Who am I to do that? Do I know better? Like, than the universe, than God? I'm not going to say that. There's no way I'm going to say that. And so I think
Well,
that people doing that and questioning themselves and stopping in that moment, that's the part that I think can be hard for people, is remembering to pause.
yeah. Well, and that's why you and I coach people, because we teach those behaviors,
Yeah.
and here's the thing that I was talking to a gentleman earlier this week about. He's a gratitude guy, and he was
Hmm.
like, how do you get people to take time to learn those
Hmm.
skills and behaviors? And I'm like, the reality is most people don't love themselves. They're not in a place to love themselves enough to do the work for themselves, but they do love something or someone else enough. And so finding your why and then starting really, really small
Yeah.
and getting support by a friend, by somebody who can love you and challenge you, not placate you. And that
Right.
is how you learn to pause, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And it's like it's just like going into the gym, right? And you need someone that's going to stand by you and coach you and tell you, okay, do another set. Do it. Oh my gosh, I had such a coach that came and helped me uh and got me back into shape in my 40s, like, so buff. But he used to kick my ass. It was, no, you're not going to put those weights down. You're going to keep going. You're going to do another set. You're going to do another set. Friends and family would be like, yeah, yeah, take a breather.
Yep.
Yeah, don't push yourself too hard. Don't push yourself too hard. And it's like they love us so much, but people can love us to death, literally, and
Yep.
love us to a place that's not good for us. And so you have to be really careful. And when I had my first coach, that was when I realized what the difference was. And I was like, oh, okay, this is the real stuff now. This is like, kind of whipping you into shape. And it's like, oh, you can't hide. You can't hide. You got to do the homework. You got to do the work. You got to show up for yourself. And it helps with the reps. It helps you build your stamina. It helps you build that momentum, and then you can take the training wheels off and then you can do it on your own. But it's nice
Yep.
to be guided in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I think we always have an upper limit we need to push past. So
Yeah,
I suspect I'll have a coach my whole life because, I mean,
absolutely.
they may shift and change depending on where I'm at. But, you know, the
Good coaches
reality
have
is
good coaches.
I have big dreams, and those dreams require people to help push me,
Yeah.
So this was such a beautiful topic and I feel like it was so organic and it married really well together.
Yeah, yeah. And it kind of brought us back to where we were last week. So that's good. We kind of tidied that up a bit. Um, and so, where can we find you, Kerri?
Well, I am currently Kerri Lewis Coach. You can find me on Facebook, Kerri Lewis Coach. I have a community and I will be doing a lot of speaking engagements in local high schools and colleges to make sure that people
Awesome.
are being encouraged to put themselves and their needs first. What about you, beautiful?
I love that. I love that you're working with the teenagers too, because you're right. Should be in school. This is what they should be learning.
I
um,
agree.
I can be found at mokshagrace.com. Anywhere on social media, hashtag Moksha Grace. I have a community, Calm the Chaos, where I will pop in and go live and we'll talk. I do workshops, but it's all about diving in, embracing your shadow, literally embracing your shadow so you can unconditionally love yourself and get to know and accept yourself, which is what we all deserve, is to be in love. So I love you, Kerri.
I love you too, girl. And you're right. When you can be in love with yourself, you are naturally loved for everybody else. You just are. So I
Yeah.
love leaving it on that note. Until
Yes. And
next week,
yes, until next week, and thank you all for being here today. And until next week, see you
show
later.
up in love for yourself because you
That's
deserve
right.
it.